All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with Bob Rose tonight. How you doing, Bob?
I'm hanging in there, Alan. How's it going? Happy Easter to you guys, by the way. Happy belated Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter to you too. Very quiet Easter, which I'm not complaining about. You know, that
No.
was it was quiet. It was nice. It was nice. I didn't get my candy like I normally get. I didn't get a little Easter basket. I just got a little bit of something. So that's okay. Because I don't care how old you get, you still want your Easter candy.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to be honest. When the Easter Bunny was buying up the candy to give to Will this year, there were more than a few extra Reese peanut butter eggs that were bought.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to complain that I didn't get an Easter basket because I ate all my Easter candy in the weeks leading up to Easter.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. No, I explained to one parent. I'm like, a, there's a thing called an Easter tax. Um, it- that the kids who back, Bob is coming back. There he is. No, when you make the Easter basket for kids, you have a parent tax of 10% of the candy that goes in that basket uh, belongs to the parents. The kids just don't know that. um, but anyway, welcome everybody to Under the Dome. Um, it's draft month. We are now officially in draft focus. The draft's at the end of this month. All we're going to see now from this point forward, free agency's kind of died off a little bit. We're just going to see draft profile after mock draft of different things and what we think the Saints may or may not do this upcoming draft. One of the things I think this is going to be a very meat and potatoes kind of draft. And so I don't think there'll be a big what's the right word I'm looking for? Like a big splash kind of pick. Like, they're not going to go get a big running back in the first round, for example. They're not going to get one of those name quarterbacks. But I think this is going to be one of those things where they just go and get offensive and defensive linemen, just really fill out the depth, kind of rebuild this team with a lot of core players, maybe a wide receiver. But, other than that, I really can't think of, positions that they're really going to target the splash name players, much as I would love to get Brock Bowers. How do you feel this draft is going to play out?
Oh, I think the same thing, and I think free agency, gave us a stronger clue as to what the Saints will be targeting, in the early rounds of the draft. The fact that they didn't even attempt to go after any tackles, the fact that the fact that they have yet to re-sign Andrus Peat. I say it that way because Andrus is still out there on the open market. And the fact that they brought Chase Young in. Granted, it's a 1-year contract, but still, at least on paper, it identifies, in a small degree anyway, it identifies that glaring weakness. They brought in Willie Gay, again on a 1-year deal, but again, on paper, they're identifying that weakness. That's not to say that they won't target edge rushers or linebackers in this draft. I hope they do, and I think they should. But again, it gives you a wider or a more narrow window as far as what their focus seems to be leading up to the draft, and that is offensive line, defensive line depth. Wouldn't surprise me if if they did not go after an edge rusher, but instead brought in a defensive tackle within the first few rounds of the draft. And wide receiver. It surprised me a little. It would surprise me a little bit if they went after a wideout in the first round. but I fully expect them to draft one, if not two, wide receivers throughout the remaining rounds of the draft. Only because you only have 5 names on that whole depth chart right now. You just, if nothing else, you need more bodies to compete.
Exactly, and we talked about a little bit about um, Ramczyk having a setback with his surgery. It's very likely that if this is not his final year, this is one of his final years. Some think that he may not even play next year.
Yeah.
I you know, I I still am holding out that I think he will try and play next year, but I don't know how long that'll last. Um, so they definitely need to get at least one tackle. We don't know what they're going to get it right, who they're going to play on the right side, because we don't know if Penning is going to be, a salvageable project. Like you said, they didn't sign Andres Pete. There is one other tackle, Becton from the Jets, former first rounder, 24 years old, would kind of fit that. Let's give him a 1-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those guys. He didn't have a good year last year with the Jets, but then again, nobody did. Uh, but he may be a guy that they may target after the draft. But this feels like this is going to be the kind of draft where they're going to go and get linemen. It's not going to be sexy, not going to be flashy or fancy. So. But with that in mind, we're still fans. We want to fantasize a little bit. So tonight's show, we're going to kind of talk about what if the Saints do go a little crazy? What if they, one of these top quarterbacks fell to him at 14 and the best offensive linemen happen to vanish off the board? Do you go and reach for a guy, or do you take, say, a Michael Penix staring at you at 14? Or do you take well, I know Jalen Daniels isn't going to follow, neither is Caleb Williams, but do you take trying to think of somebody who could slide? Not going to say Bo Nix because Calvin would just lose his mind. But one of those guys, or Brock Bowers is sitting there, or a guy like let's say one of the top receivers. Marvin Harrison, no, but one of those guys is just staring at you, and it's like he is rated so highly on our board, we can't afford to pass him up. Is that the kind of, so what kind of players could you see possibly sliding in this draft that could, I knew Calvin would say that. What kind of players could you see slide a little bit that should go in the top 10, maybe slide to 14 or 15?
First of all, I could see a quarterback or two slipping, but the New Orleans Saints will not take them. Not as long as Dennis Allen is coach. Derek Carr is his guy. Accept it, people. I don't care if the reincarnation of John Elway is sitting at 14. The Saints will not take a quarterback there. I'm going to say that slower. The Saints will not take a quarterback in the first round. Period. Doesn't matter who it is. It could be Calvin's favorite player, Bo Nix. It could be Drake May. Who, by the way, I believe if a quarterback slides, it'll be him. JJ McCarthy is the one everybody is rising. I don't understand why, but I know he is. What if JJ McCarthy? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Now the player, there's a singular player or a specific position that I could see the Saints maybe pulling a surprise, and say the top 3 tackles go off the board in the top 10 or 12 picks, and that'd be my opinion. Alt from Notre Dame, Fashanu from Penn State, and Fuaga from Oregon State. Those are my top 3 tackles. Rather than reaching just a little bit for a Mims from Georgia, Latham from Alabama, or Fatanu from Washington. All are talented players, but rather than reaching a little bit, if those first 3 tackles go, and the Saints look and they see, oh my God, Brock Bowers is still sitting there. In past years, I'd have said the Saints probably wouldn't do it because the Pete Carmichael, Sean Payton offense, I'm not going to say they undervalued tight ends, but they undervalued putting a top priority on tight ends, whether it's the draft or free agency. I don't know. The Kubiak Shanahan system has always been very focused on tight ends. So maybe that changes if a Brock Bowers slips to them and those top three tackles are gone. And that's the singular player. The position that I could see the Saints surprising us with, for all those years we wanted them to draft a wideout in the first or second round as a compliment to Michael Thomas, and they didn't until Chris Olave. This would be the year that the Saints do a Saint thing and overlook tackle and go wide out. Like you said, Neighbors, LSU, not going to be there. Harrison from Ohio State, not going to be there. The third wideout is probably Rome Odunze from Washington, who I love a lot. He's a top 10 talent that a lot of people are thinking that's one of the guys that are going to slip until the mid-teens. I think he'd be a great fit in Kubiak's offense. And again, if one of those top three tackles are there and New Orleans doesn't take them, I think that there should be a riot just outside the stadium. But if those top three tackles go and New Orleans says to themselves, you know what, let's hold off on Mims, Latham, Fotanu, Patrick Paul, those other guys. See if we can get that trade back and get them at the end of the first round, beginning of the second. We're going to go a wideout or Brock Bowers here, or maybe a Jared Verse from Florida State, another guy I absolutely love. Maybe they go that direction and kind of bolster the edge rush. So I think if the Saints pull a surprise, it's going to be at one of those spots, but only if those top offensive tackles go first.
You basically took all my predictions because that's exactly what I was thinking of. No, that's good. That means we're on the same wavelength because Brock Bowers is my top guy as a surprise pick. I don't think he'll make it past 10, but if he were to, I could see the Saints taking him only because he can block, he can pass catch, he can do all the things that you would want in this offense, and he would fulfill that need really for that contested catch guy, the guy that go over the middle, that kind of stuff. But if Brock Bowers goes early, like I think he will, maybe at 9 to Chicago, if Chicago doesn't trade it, because I think that's the wild card pick. I think if Chicago trades a pick, it's going to be 9, and it's going to be targeting one of those teams, Denver, Minnesota, Seattle, one of those teams that want to trade up to get in front of the other ones so they can go take J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Penix, one of those guys, or Drake May if he slides that far. I really think quarterback's going to go 1, 2, 3 in this draft. Yep. I think that's how it's going to go. So then whoever is number 4, that's going to be the one that people are going to be looking at. Okay, Chicago, do I have to get ahead? Do you have to move up to 9? Do I have to move up higher? Because Atlanta needs a quarterback, but Atlanta's not going to take one at this point. They're going to take a defensive end. Unfortunately, it'll probably be Dallas Turner. I hope they do what they normally do and take the wrong guy and go get somebody that everybody thinks is going to be really good and isn't very good. But because that's me just hating on Atlanta. But if they take an offensive lineman, it really kind of screws the Saints up a little bit because they need offensive linemen more than they need defensive ends, although they need a defensive end. I think they really want to see what Foskey can do. I have zero confidence in Peyton Turner, but they got to consider it. This is Peyton Turner's last year. He's going to play for a contract. Let's see what he can do. Let's see if he can stay healthy more than a quarter. One of those things. But with the signing of Chase Young, and I feel confident that Chase Young is recovered enough, they can wait on a defensive end to 45. So I think this is where they're really going to target that offensive lineman. The receiver is my other surprise pick, and I'm old school, guys. I have to go to the magazines. Yeah, the internet's great. The internet's fun and all, but come draft day, I'm not looking at my phone or my iPad. I'm digging into the books because I like books. But yeah, the receivers I had in mind, I'm gonna try and find one that's not listed who you had, because obviously the LSU kids, they'll be gone, and they really don't fit what the Saints are looking for, because the Saints
Yeah.
are looking for a big physical guy. I mean, Keon Coleman from Florida State. He's more of a second round projected guy, but
Yeah.
man, if I'm gonna draw up somebody who I think is the Michael Thomas clone, it's probably Keon Coleman.
Yep.
But maybe Xavier Worthy, but he's more of a speed guy. Xavier Legette from South Carolina is a possibility too, because he's big. He's 6'1", but he's 225. I mean, that's thick for a receiver. He's more of a second round guy, but that's somebody I could see the Saints targeting. Mitchell from Texas is another one that the Saints possibly could look at. So you're looking at guys 6'2", 6'3", anywhere from 200 to 220 in size and in thickness, wingspan. Those are guys that those are guys I really, really like as receivers. But I tend to think more that's the guy who is going to be the that's going to be fifth, and people are going to freak out when they do that if they can get one of those top tackles first.
Yeah,
Somebody
I mean,
just commented. I wanted to add on this. Saints hardly ever draft. Let me comment on this real quick. Saints hardly ever draft an LSU. They have never taken an LSU player in the first round.
No.
Never. The highest second round pick, I think, is probably either Dalton Hilliard or Devery Henderson. Those are your two highest LSU picks.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, going back to what you said at wide receiver, wide receiver, it feels like if they get the tackle that they want in the first round, I think they legitimately go best player available in the second round, but they have their eyes on a wide receiver. Wideout also feels like a good possibility that if they don't go one at 45 in the second round, they have all those fifth round picks and sixth round picks. We know that they're not. We know that they're going to deal some of them, and the area that the Saints and Mickey Loomis have liked to trade in recent years has been that late third, early fourth round. That's where I see them, picking up one of their wide receivers. And a guy like Keon Coleman, I love, but I don't see him available that late. Everybody wants to talk about Odunze from Washington, and rightfully so. I love the kid. But Jalen Polk and McMillan, the other two receivers at Washington, they're not as big as Odunze is, but they know they use their body well. They're threats at the defense against the defense on all three levels. They're good run after the catch guys. They go over the middle, and they're used to working in a quick rhythm offense. Those are guys that I'm watching. I watched film on Luke McCaffrey from Rice. My God, can this kid play? And there's a connection there. Not just with Christian McCaffrey and Clint Kubiak last year, but remember, Gary Kubiak, Clint's father, coached Ed McCaffrey for about 9 years of his career in Denver. There is a long track record here. If I had to place money on this draft, other than offensive tackle in the first round, I'm going to place. I'd be willing to throw a little tidy sum, Vegas's way, that Luke McCaffrey will be a New Orleans Saint somewhere in the middle rounds of this draft.
I think my son goes to bed with a picture of Luke McCaffrey next to his nightstand every night because he has been talking about Luke McCaffrey probably since January. You know, I mean, he really has. He's been in every mock draft he takes. He's got Luke McCaffrey in the middle rounds. So um, it to me it all depends on how this draft falls.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, Matt. That 45 is going to be really interesting, and this is where since you mentioned trading back into the second and third round, I do want to bring this up. So, what are the odds that the Saints burn an asset to? I think Calvin was the one that may have said it as a wild possibility to trade back into the first round or to trade into the second round, or even less likely, what are the odds the Saints trade down at any point in this draft to acquire more picks?
I think a lot of us would like to see them trade down. Again, especially if they don't get one of those top 3 tackles at 14, maybe trade down 5 or 6 spots. Hoping that a J.C. Latham and Amarius Mims, another one of the second tier tackles, you can get that while still picking up a couple picks. But listen, Mickey Loomis just doesn't do that. To want it, to root for it is one thing. To expect it to happen is something completely different. It's more likely that the Saints are worried that an Alt, Fashanu, and Fuaga are going to be gone before 14, so they trade up. I don't want to see that because they need these. Don't get me wrong. I need to see one of these 3 tackles, but they need these picks, and they need to hit on as many of them as possible to fill the several holes, either by lack of skill or just aging positions on this roster. The 4 5th-round picks and 2 or 3 6th-round picks that they have, I'd rather see them package them, a couple of those picks to move into the 3rd round, move early into the 4th round, or maybe move up in the 2nd round. That's been the Saints' way recently, and I see that being the more likely scenario.
Well, I am like you're going to lay money that we draft Luke McCaffrey. I have money that the Saints are going to burn an asset like a 3rd round pick to move into this 2nd round this year, lower 2nd round. I think they will do that kind of stuff. I'm with Calvin. Odds next to never that that they'll trade back, just because. For them to trade back, someone really is going to have to want a player. They want to move up to go get a guy. And unfortunately, the only way that could happen is if one of those top quarterbacks somehow slides past everybody ahead of the Saints. Yeah. And a team like Minnesota, well, I think Minnesota's drafting ahead of the Saints too.
They are,
but
Seattle is one team I think is behind the Saints that I could see making a move like that.
Yeah, that someone like that needs to get up to 14 to go get that guy, because they think they won't make it past to wherever they are. That's the only way I can see someone trading with the Saints so they can go back. The 2nd round's a little bit different because the way the draft falls now, round 2 becomes almost like round 1 again, where they start seeing, okay, who slid out of the 1st round we thought was never going to make it past the 1st round. That's the guy I want to move up to go grab. And that's a more likely scenario. They slide back from 45. But then again, what does it look like those first few picks? What do who's coming off the board? If you have a lot of potentially good players that you could grab at 45, I don't think I'd want them to trade back. So that's the hard part about, everybody says trade back, get more picks, trade back. Okay, you can trade back only so far, and then you kind of screw yourselves on some of the top players. especially at need positions like the Saints have. It's
Yeah.
easier to trade back if you're not looking for guys who you want to start right away. You're looking
Hmm.
at guys who, are going to be depth pieces that you're going to start in the next couple of years.
Right.
That's the hard part about trading back on these in the draft. Um, it's funny when we're going through all the different names and stuff of possible players at 45. I'm looking at this is from 1982, by the way, guys. This game, the 49ers defending Super Bowl champions, and later on when you talk one of the things that came to mind was Bill Walsh. I think it was the '84 draft, where he just kept trading back and trading back and trading out of the first round and trading out of the second round, and he had like a boatload of third and fourth round picks, and everybody's getting nervous. So like, are we drafting today at all? I mean, when are you going to start drafting players? And it turns out Bill Walsh ended up building a lot of the core of his later teams by
Yep.
trading back like that. But they were in positions. And the reason why I'm saying I'm looking at the names of these guys in the 82 team, how many of them were not there after 1983, 84.
Yeah.
I mean, Hacksaw Reynolds is in this game for the 49ers. Dana McLemore, Freddie Solomon, all these guys end up getting, leaving the team, and you're getting the Jerry Rices, and you're getting a lot of the good players that end up being a core of their team in the back half of the 80s when they were going for that three-peat, being part of that team. So that's what made me think about that. But now I lost my train of thought. I can't believe this. I was just getting ready to make a point about something else with the Saints, and I just lost that train of thought. Oh, so what would it take, you think, for the Saints to move up, either packaging those fifth round picks to move up into the fourth? Because again, the fourth round is kind of like the first round again, because it's day 3 of the draft. Or what would it take to move up into the third round? What do you think the Saints would have to do to get a third or fourth round pick?
As far as what they would have to give up,
Yeah.
it would take. It would undoubtedly take multiple day 3 picks. If we're talking late third or early fourth, you're probably talking. Just a guesstimate, like two fifth round picks and a sixth round pick, or 2 fifths and next year's fourth, or something like that. It's going to take multiple picks. You remember a couple years ago, I think it was for either Adam Troutman or Zach Bond, but I believe it was Troutman. And this is why this is the only time the Saints do it. They see a specific player that they want, that they like, that they fall in love with, and they'll move heaven and earth to go get it. Well, Sean Payton fell in love with Adam Troutman and traded all of his day 3 picks to the Minnesota Vikings, which were a total of 6 draft picks. That's the kind of move it would take. Maybe not to that extreme, but it would take, like I said, they have 4 fifth-round picks and 2 sixths. To move into late third, early fourth, without giving up too high a pick next year, then you're going to have to undoubtedly surrender at least 3, if not 4, of those day 3 picks. No doubt in my mind.
Well, and one of the reasons why they have a third round pick this year, is because they traded their third round pick to move up into the fourth round to go get Jake Haener. So, that gives you an idea for that too. They don't have their fourth round pick this year because that was sent to the Broncos in exchange for the Broncos' second round pick when they traded Sean Payton.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, the Saints cannot wait from pick 45 to pick, 143, 142, like 100 picks for their next pick
Yeah.
It might be 127. I have to go back and look again. I've done so many mock drafts where I'm trading. I don't remember what number the Saints actually have in the first round, their first fifth round pick. But yeah, they can't wait 100 picks to pick again. They need to get a third or fourth round pick. Ideally, I'd like to get a third round pick. Fourth round pick's fun because it's the beginning of day 3, but a third round pick to me is more important. Oh, by
Yeah.
the way, if you wonder why Morton Anderson is not kicking field goals in this game, um, this is 1982. In the preseason, Morton Anderson kicked the field. That was Fritsch, by the way. Tony Fritsch kicked that field goal. Morton Anderson admired his kickoff in a preseason game against the Houston Oilers, and somebody clocked him really good. And this is after the strike and everything else. But anyway, Anderson got hurt, and they kind of limited him just to kickoffs in the 82 season. But yeah, that's why Tony Fritsch was kicking that field goal in that game. But anyway, yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm watching the game as I'm talking about all this. But to me, going back to what I was saying earlier, I think the Saints really need to get back in that third round because they need to get that extra pick in the top 100.
Yeah.
You can't wait until the fourth round. You need too much talent. And if you're going to be drafting 2 tackles, I don't want the 2 tackles to be at 14 and 45. There's too many other needs.
Mm-hmm.
Defense. Now let's talk about pick 45. It's a lot harder to predict because we don't know how the rest of the draft's going to play out. I'm sorry, that was an extra point. I thought it was a field goal, but that was an extra point. Anyway, they've got too many needs on this team. But we talked about surprise at 14. Some other surprises at 45. What kind of players should we be looking at 45? Let's look at defensive ends. I really think that defensive end may be the target at 45 if they don't go receiver. Defensive tackles too. Somebody to put alongside of Brian Brzee. Who do you see could be in that area, that range at that point? I know. Scramble, grab your notes.
There's a few that I like, and I'm just going to categorize them as defensive line. I don't believe both tackles from Texas are going to go in the first round, and it depends whether you like your pass rusher, your dynamic guy Byron Murphy, from the Longhorns, or whether you just want that big, beefy monster that automatically commands double and triple teams like Tavondre Sweat. If it's me and Tavondre Sweat, I get my tackle in the first round, and Tavondre Sweat is available at 45. I am running that name up to the podium because he is just the kind of guy. He's not going to fill up a stat sheet, but he's going to be for you more recent fans, a Vita Vea in the middle. For you older fans, a Tony Saragusa or a Sam Adams, where he's a space eater. Just his mere presence will automatically clog up running lanes and command double teams. And what that does, that frees up. Somebody is going to get a single blocker on him, whether it's Brzee in the middle, Chase Young, Carl Granderson on one edge, or Cam Jordan on the other. So that kind of presence just makes your entire defense better. Another guy, and Matt, I agree with what you said. Or Kohor from Clemson, and I know I butchered that name. Brandon Fisk from Florida State are a couple defensive tackles that might be available. If you're talking edge or a guy that can play end and the inside, Chris Jenkins from Michigan. I know a lot of people are familiar with him. A name that you might not be familiar with, but he isn't nearly as raw a prospect as what people might have you believe, is Darius Robinson from Missouri. first team All SEC defensive end last year, filled up the stat sheet, but he started his career at defensive tackle. And you watch for this name because he's 6'5", 285. In other words, he fits what the Saints defensive end prototype is. But he's a guy that is plays with tremendous strength. So he could still play inside on some, on obvious passing downs. That gives you a lot of flexibility with your defensive front, something that the Saints haven't had in the last couple of years, especially with David Onyemata now gone. Watching Darius Robinson, Onyemata, he kind of reminds me of Onyemata. Christian Boyd too, Matt. But Darius Robinson, he just, like I said, he's a little raw, but not nearly as raw as some scouts have written him up to be. I just think he plays with a tremendous amount of strength. He's power reliant, but an underrated athlete. Once he learns to use that athleticism a little bit more, that's going to widen his array of pass rush moves. He already plays the run extremely well. And he's just going to get better as he gets more experienced out on the edge. So, yeah, those are the type of names that I'd like to see on the board at 45, where I would expect the Saints to fill out their defensive line in the second round.
And here's the thing. The Saints had their entire defensive staff, I think, out there at the Texas Pro Day. So I think Sweat is the guy. Byron Murphy may slide that far. I'm not sure. But that's the other guy. The only problem I have with Brian Murphy is he's only 6'1".
Yeah.
I want, I know they're trying to break the prototype. I know they're trying to get away from that. But for a space eater, I like a guy. I would rather. This is going to sound terrible, but I like the size and stats of McKinley Jackson from Texas A&M over Byron Murphy, although Murphy is the more polished and productive player, only because I want somebody 6'2" or taller, and I want a big body. You've got your speed guy in Brazil. Now you need the big guy who is going to eat up the double team and push guys into the quarterback up the middle. That doesn't help with mobile quarterbacks who are getting outside on your ass, but you need to build your entire defensive line up.
Yeah.
And to me, if you got a defensive tackle there, and you get a guy like Sweat, man, you've suddenly made this defensive line a hell of a lot more impressive, a lot more effective. You're taking away the running game, the read option plays. You're taking away cutback lanes. And I really, really like Sweat a lot right here. He just 6'4", 260, 362. Just prototypical size, space eater, big long arms, grabs people and just holds them in place. And you had Syracuse was somebody I thought of. Norman Hand was another one.
Yeah.
Just somebody. What was the name of that Packers guy? It was really big.
Gilbert Brown.
Gilbert Brown back in the Brett Favre Super Bowl days. I mean, just ate up blockers and just made it so hard for you to get outside on them. So I like defensive end, but if I had to put my no, not Raji, going further back than that, before you were born, or maybe right when you were born, Matt, Gilbert Brown, big fat guy, who played with the Green Bay Packers in the late 90s. But to me, if they don't get defensive end, they go defensive tackle. So you get two tackles. You get your offensive tackle and your defensive tackle. But I think if we're doing a meat and potatoes kind of draft, I think that's where they go, because that's what they're looking at. I want my defensive and offensive line to dominate, and this is where I'm going to build my team. And they want a defensive end, but they want to give the guys they have a shot too. So it's not critical they get defensive end on this draft. They're not trying. they're trying to build the team, but they're not trying to build a Super Bowl team in one draft, if that makes any sense. This is a slow process. We're going to take it one building block at a time, and I would be very happy with those two guys. Those are probably two starters right there.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. Well, you need your first round pick to be a starter. If Dennis Allen is going to keep his job, that first round pick has got to be an immediate starter, an impact starter at that. But Sweat or that big strong defensive tackle, as we just mentioned, that makes everybody's job easier in that front seven. Going to tie up blockers and give Demario Davis a free run at the ball. Going to give Cam, Carl Granderson, Chase Young a lot of single blocking opportunities, and going to free up Brian Bresee, from all the attention that he was getting down the stretch last year. I'm not going to say Brian will get less double teams on him, because you have to double the inside guys. But he's gonna have more freedom, on those defensive stunts and things like that. And remember, you mentioned Foskey, and I loved this kid last year. I'm not down. I know a lot of people are down on him because he did virtually nothing as a rookie. Well, folks, look up Cam Jordan's stats. Cam didn't do anything as a rookie either, and that's not an outlier. There's a whole lot of defensive ends, that didn't do much in their rookie year and then just exploded in years 2 and 3. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen to Isaiah Foskey, but the biggest jump an NFL player makes at pretty much any position is between years 1 and 3. With Peyton Turner in a contract year, Peyton Turner's in a contract year. Just maybe he stays healthy and shows out a little bit. Chase Young is on a 1-year contract. He is playing for big money, and he knows it. Carl Granderson had his breakout year last year, and now you're talking about Isaiah Foskey maybe getting an opportunity. All those guys are going to shine out even more if you have yet another guy in the middle of that defense that is just going to push pass pockets, clog rushing lanes, and give your outside guys more single blocking opportunities.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I'm looking at this draft. It's like, this is the draft where they build the inside out on the defensive line. And I think on the offensive line, they build from the outside in. They're going to replace the tackles and build in from there. Andres Pete is a possibility to bring him back. Becton's a possibility to bring him in, as depth. Maybe there's just not much out there. To me, you're not drafting a guard at 14. You're not drafting a guard at 45. But if they were to trade back into the second or third, the second round would be great. But if they trade back into the third or fourth round, I think that's where they start looking at the tackle guard guys, somebody that could come in and slide in for this year. Depth for that first year as a red shirt rookie, kind of like what Salvadori had to go through. But you want somebody to push the guys that you have on your roster. So you're looking at a tackle guard to come in if they can get back in that third round.
Let me ask you something. And I meant to ask you when we were talking about tackles at 14. Say the worst case scenario for the Saints does happen, and all Fashanu Fuaga are off the board. Now, if you're making the pick, you still have Fatanu from Washington, Mims from Georgia, Latham from Alabama, Guyton from Oklahoma, if you really want to roll the dice. Do you take one of those guys at 14 just because you know how major your need is? Do you trade back, or do you gamble that one of them are going to be available at 45 and go somewhere else at 14?
Man, that's when you really need to try and trade back, because reaching for a need is just that's how you get a Penning. That's how you get Jonathan Sullivan or Sean Knight or something like that, because you're trying to force. I need this player, and what does it matter if I take him at 14 as opposed to 23? It does matter because he's not the 14th best player on your board. You have to stay true to your board. Yep. Yeah, Kenny Rogers, I hear you. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it's hard. If that disaster happens, then you got to that's when you take a receiver. That's when you take the tight end. That's when you take the best player available. You really do. And yeah, it hurts because you need this position, but at worst you end up with a good player. But if you reach for somebody, you could end up with no good players, so that's always my attitude when it comes to that.
I'll agree with that to a certain point, and I've had this conversation, and I would do the same. I would attempt to trade back a few picks, to get some value, in return without reaching for a player. But a lot of people feel, and I agree. I think that there are legitimately up to 7 tackles in this draft class that could be starters, but there's a big drop off after those top 3, and if you miss out on those top 3 at 14, are you really going to gamble that? Yeah, Mims, Guyton, Patrick, Paul, Latham, any of those guys. Are you going to gamble that any of them are still available at 45? Right. Are you going to gamble that any of them are still available at 45?
That guy right there is a reach. That was Russell Oakslaber, number 14. That guy right there is a reach.
That's not a reach. That's whoever's making the draft pick was on crystal meth at the time.
Oh man, well, I watched the '78 season, and I get it. The Saints went through 4 place kickers and 2 punters in '78, so I get the need for one. But god dang, you never take a kicker in the first round. Ray Guy is a unicorn. You don't go. Ray Guy is in the Hall of Fame, but he was a unicorn. You're not going to get a Ray Guy every time. That was just stupid to do that. Oh man, especially because you just went 7 and 8, and you're so close to turning your team around. That really fits into your discussion too, because that '78 team really needed defensive ends and more linebackers to play this flex defense, a good defensive tackle, and they pass on all that to take a need position kicker in the first round. Oh my God, 10.9% financing on a truck. Holy crap. People would be screaming if you gave them 10.9% financing on a truck.
And Calvin, I agree with
60.
Calvin, I agree with what you said. Calvin said that he doesn't see 8 or 9 tackles going before 45. No, I don't either, and that would be a rarity. But if you're the Saints and you don't get your guy at 14, are you going to gamble and hope that one of those guys are at 45? I say no. I agree with Allen. I don't reach on a Mims or a Latham at 14, but at that point, Mickey Loomis, you have to break your mold, and create some movement. Move back a few picks to get one of those guys to ensure you have your tackle, and pick up some other picks to address wide receiver, defensive tackle, whatever else. Or you're faced with a position where you have to take 45 and a couple of those day 3 picks and move up in the second. So, I mean, you're gambling at a position that frankly has been abysmal, and now you're talking about an all-pro guy in Ramczyk that may not play this year. I agree with what you said, Alan. If Ramczyk can walk, he'll play. But what kind of player are you getting to is the question. You have to get a tackle somewhere in these first, I'm going to say 40 picks. You have to.
Yeah. You cannot possibly. I don't care if Penny looks like, you play the Rocky montage music and he looks like, he's the guy coming out there to fight Clubber Lang in Revenge. He's been working with Apollo Creed. He's lost weight. He's lighter in his feet and the whole bit. I don't care. At best, again, you've got somebody who can come in and beat out a Becton or a Pete or something like that. But don't you dare say, well, you know what? We just didn't see the guy we wanted, so we're just going to go with the guys we have. We like our room. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
Allen said that. I would join the thing. Allen needs to be fired right now if he
yeah.
said we like our room. We cannot go with the receiver core of 2021. We just can't, and this as offensive lineman, because we've talked about it many, many times, but this entire offensive scheme is dependent on offensive linemen being really good and really mobile, who can do these legal put that in quotation mark, but these cut blocks that they do, they have
Hmm.
to be able to do the zone block, inside and outside zone. You have to be able to move and get these things going, because otherwise you can't do anything. You can't get the passes to your speed receivers. You can't get Kamara the ball in space. You can't run the ball inside. And Derek Carr just gets the shit beat out of him again. And this time, you don't have a Jameis Winston on the bench. You've got Jake Hayner, who, yeah, he's younger and more mobile, but has far, far less experience. You don't have the luxury of having somebody like that you could count on to go out there and play as a starter. So, yeah, I mean, it's a must. It's a must. Now, that being said, your scenario. Here's my scenario. You're at 14. You're starting to see the tackles slide a little bit. Chicago is looking to trade that number 9 pick because they got that quarterback already, and they need a lot of help. So they're more than willing to slide back. What are you willing to trade to move up to get one of those tackles? Or if Reuniti on ice. There's some cheap alcohol for you. No, I'm sorry. I just saw the commercial. But anybody who's a college student in the early 80s knows what Reuniti on ice is. That's like Bartlett's and James. I mean,
Yep.
was that's the grandfather of White Claw. The father is Bartlett's and James. And then, White Claw and the rest of those things exist today. So anyway, if are you willing to trade, or what are you willing to trade to move up to get a John Alt or any of those tackles? Are you willing to trade up to 9? Are you willing to trade up to 6? And what if you have to trade up? What are you talking about giving up? I don't want to give up that 45th pick. But what are you talking about giving up to move up to those slots?
And that's truthfully one of the things that it'll probably take to do it. Giving up 45 and or your first round pick next year, because that's the going rate to move up in the first round. And that's why I don't want to see the Saints do it. I don't want to give up 45. I sure as hell don't want to give up the first round draft choice next year. Alan, I think if Chicago's name is coming up at number 9 and all 3 tackles are still on the board, I think I might be content to sit there and wait, because you look at where the board sits now anyway. Denver's at 11, I think. Denver and Minnesota are like 11, 12 or 12, 13, something like that. And I'm pretty sure neither one of them are going to go offensive line. They're going to do their best to move up and get quarterbacks. Knowing that, and knowing that those 2 slots are probably reserved for quarterback, or maybe defensive back if you're Minnesota, defensive front 7 if you're Denver. In other words, not a position that you yourself are targeting. So if Chicago's name is coming up at 9 and all 3 tackles are still sitting there, I'm not so sure that I don't go ahead and let the Bears pick And if they pick a tackle, then I'm looking at 10, 11, 12, 13, and saying, okay, who's going to take a tackle here? Do I have to move up with one of them? Because again, I'm trying to avoid that scenario because you simply don't have the realistic ammunition to trade up and still fill your other holes. So that's just as much of a nightmare scenario to me as all three top tackles going before you pick at 14. But I know, again, knowing that I need a tackle and knowing that there's a big drop off after those three, you have no choice but to either dangle 45, and hope you can move a bunch of those day 3 picks to get back into day 2, or dangle a first or second round pick next year. Now, if I'm Dennis Allen, I'd be more willing to do that begrudgingly, knowing that my job is probably on the line by how I perform this year.
Yeah. And if I were to trade 2 first-round picks, and I'm talking my first next year, to move up to get John Alt, I'm like, okay, he's kind of worth it because you're going to you draft him. That's your left tackle for the next 12 years. He doesn't have degenerative knee problems. He is the perfect tackle. Yeah, you're right. But that's so hard to think about making that move to go get a guy like that, because you have to go so high to get him. And you're talking about multiple picks that you're giving away. You're probably looking at giving away a first and a third, probably to move up into the top 5 to get a guy like that.
Yep.
So that's the tricky part when it comes to trying to figure out where these guys are going to fall and how do I get my guy. The draft has to fall a certain way, and more so than any other draft. And I don't want to say like, well, then the Saints shouldn't have won so many games to have to worry about these things. They still would have to worry about this because you weren't going to lose enough games to be in the top 5 picks. You'd won when you won 4 games, you were already on the outside of top 5. Honestly, it's, and then the what you really shouldn't have done is you shouldn't have traded away so many picks from the future to move up to get Penning and Olave and Peyton. That's really what screws you on all this. So you don't have the ammo, but you're trying to do a soft reset with your cap. So unless you're going to do the same thing you did back then, and trade the future away to get a guy right now, then it's got to be a guy that you are confident in. This is the guy that is going to be my left tackle, my left defensive end, whatever the position is. This is the guy that's going to be there for the next 10 to 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, outside of Joe Alt, maybe those other two, the Penn State guy, maybe the Washington guy, I'm not sure. I don't know how much I want to trade from the future because I do not want to trade that 45.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a catch-22, and it's the risk you take when you do mortgage your future to move up in any draft, because if you lose out on that, like if Trevor Penning was a hit, at least an immediate hit, then we wouldn't be having this conversation about offensive tackles. We would say, no matter how this board falls, you stay at 14, if you don't trade back. But no, again, they need a tackle because Penning didn't work out, because Ramczyk is on borrowed time at best. And Calvin, I agree with you. The only reason I'm trading up is to get a quarterback. We know the Saints aren't doing that. But again, anytime you trade up, you take that risk because the price to trade up, in the first round is just so high. And it's the ultimate roll of the dice. And if you lose it, you are sitting in the exact position that the New Orleans Saints are right now.
Yeah, hang on a second here. I'm gonna find my Jimmy Johnson draft card. I had it I had it earlier today. Okay. Here it is. All right. So the Chargers, Matt said it was 17. It was the Chargers looking to trade at 5. This card says it's worth 1,700 points. The Saints have 1,100 points at 14. So you still need another 600 points. Pick number 45 is worth 450 points. So that's still not enough to move up to 5, according to the trade value card. So you have to throw another pick in. Now, next year's draft card isn't set yet, but you have a ballpark figure. So you have an idea. Let's assume that you're going to be picking, say, in the teens, lower teens, if you were to trade up. So now you're looking at a 600 pick is 31, is 600 points. If you're picking in the teens, Jacksonville's 950, Cincinnati's 900, so that's 17 and 18. Look, the Jimmy Johnson draft card, everybody lives by it now. That's how they value trades. So, how do you move up to 5? What you're going to end up overpaying for to move up to the 5th spot?
I'll tell you what, if you move up to 5, you better goddamn well be drafting Marvin Harrison.
The first 4 picks, Chicago. What's that, Bob? I'm sorry.
I said if you're moving all the way up to 5, at that point you ignore tackle because you better goddamn well be drafting Marvin Harrison.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think he goes to Arizona at 4.
Yeah, I do too.
That's the only hard part. Yeah, that's the only hard part. But yeah, Marvin Harrison be good. Daniels is going to 2. Is going at 2. Washington is going to bed every night with his picture. New England is taking. New England's probably going to take Penix or who's the other guy? Oh, Drake May. So then you have the Cardinals at 4, Chargers at 5, Giants at 6, Tennessee at 7, Atlanta at 8, and Chicago at 9. And then the Jets at 10. And the Jets are going to take a tackle. So one of those tackles is going to the Jets at 10. So that's why I keep circling 9. 9 is worth $1,350. So that's the first round pick, swapping first round picks, plus 250 points. And just get an idea for that 5th round pick. Let's see, where is the 5th round pick for the Saints? It's going to take several. It's going to take several to get 250 points because they're not worth very much. They're only worth 30 or 40 points each. Again, that's the problem when you lose your 3rd and 4th round picks. You now suddenly don't have the value to move up to get that first to move up to 9. So you're talking about trading probably your 3rd round pick in 2025 to move up to 9, but it gets you ahead of the Jets. Yeah, Bob, sounds like you're in a war zone.
We're getting hammered here. It's been a torrential downpour all day. The river's coming over its banks, and then that thunder boomer y'all heard, I think rattled the inside windows too.
So is there an old man in a big boat loading animals 2x2 out there?
I've been watching.
I'll tell you what, we've gotten that kind of rain down here, of course, in New
Oh yeah.
Orleans. So, but yeah. So when you're talking about draft scenarios and trading, look at the go dig up the Jimmy Johnson draft trade card because that's what teams use to see the value of your trades. So that's the hard part about all of this. So it looks like to me, it looks like the Saints are going to have to let the draft come to them, but that's the danger. Um, after the Jets, it's let me scroll back over. After the Jets at 10, it's Minnesota, Denver, and Las Vegas. Those are three teams that need quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So that's the quarterback fight there. Then behind the Saints is Indianapolis, Seattle, and Jacksonville. Seattle, somebody you could trade down with to pick up a pick, but what do you get? You might be able to get a fourth rounder out of that, and Seattle's fourth round pick is worth Seattle's fourth round pick's worth a lot, actually. Where is Seattle? Unfortunately, it's not in draft order. I mean, it's in draft order, but it's by numbers. It's not by rounds. So I'm just looking. Third round pick, fourth round pick. Seattle's is Jacksonville. Seattle's fourth round pick's only worth 58 points. Seattle's third round pick is worth 185 points. So you might be able to get a third round pick out of that if you swap positions. So that's a possibility.
But Seattle's another team that, at least if you believe reports, as recently as today, they were talking about building their offensive line in the draft. So if you're going to trade back to get one of those second-tier tackles, you're literally giving your pick away to a team that's going to take one of the tackles that you're hoping to get later on, potentially.
Yep. Exactly. So, yeah. That's all part of the process. It's all that's what happens when it comes to these trades. And why I have to laugh at Saint social media when they get into this. Bob, second to last thing of the night. I wanted to talk about this actually to start the conversation, but we kind of jumped right into the draft. And again, next week we're going to talk more about the draft. We'll talk about the fifth round picks. We'll talk about late round guys. The impact the new kickoff rule may have in the draft. We'll go into all that stuff. But speaking of special teams, Saints signed a kicker, a young guy, Charles Smith or Smythe. It's spelled Smyth. He's a Gaelic football player who only just started kicking in American football like within the past year. And they have videos out here of him out there kicking a 63-yard field goal. He said he was kicking 66-yarders out there. What do you make of this? Is this legitimate competition for Grupe, or is this just an oddity? What's going on here?
I hope it's legitimate competition for Grupe. And it's not that the kid played badly last year. He had some rookie bumps, and unfortunately, a couple of them it kind of cost the team a spot in the playoffs. But you need your kicker to have competition. Unless you have Will Lutz in his prime or Morton Anderson in his prime, you have to have a guy to push him. And maybe it's this Smythe guy. I'd like to see it because it would be a fun story. But I mean, I wouldn't read a whole lot into it other than it's another camp leg. That you got to believe they have reasonable confidence in Grupe because they didn't bring in anybody else last year to challenge them during the season. And we've seen Sean Payton do that with Will Lutz in the past. So you got to believe that there's a certain degree of confidence with Grupe, but it's not a bad signing either because especially a kicker because this is exactly how you stumble on to success stories. Will Lutz, even a guy that was cut in training camp, Sean Payton gets a call from John Harbaugh and say, yeah, hey, Sean, I think you really need to take a look at this guy. We have one of the best kickers in the National Football League, so he was never going to make our team, and the rest is history. So, so it's a no risk, high reward situation for the Saints. If it doesn't work out, nobody's going to remember this 6 months from now. And if it does work out, Dennis Allen looks like a genius.
And I was going to bring up the fact that, the kicker Headley was somebody that they signed, and he beat out Gilligan. Gilligan was a guy they found. They stashed him in the practice squad. So it's all this is the kind of things they do. You find a kicker, and then you may stash him in the practice squad. He may beat out your regular kicker. You don't know. Ironically, to me, it's not the long kicks that were Grupe's problem. It was really the short kicks he kind of messed up on. And that's really what undid Will Lutz too. Lutz missed the short kicks. It wasn't the long kicks he was having trouble with. So this is an interesting kid. I want to watch him play. I'd love to hear him talk. Because I just think a Galic kicker like this is just fun. Yeah, we're gonna put this on. We're gonna put this up for Bob all the time. Dennis Allen's like a genius, but it's something that you want to see have happen, because these undrafted free agents, these guys that they find, like a Rashid Shaheed, like a Deontay Hardy, these are the kind of players that end up really making your team and making you look smarter than you are compared to other draft picks, especially when you're not drafting well. We're sitting there stressing over, we only have 2 picks in the top 100. But if you can get a Pro Bowl kick returner or an all-pro kick returner like you got with Shaheed as an undrafted free agent, you get a kicker or a punter who can do these things. You can find an offensive lineman that plays like that. Man, suddenly now we're not having these conversations where we're freaking out over, oh my God, how are we going to do this? How are we going to fill these holes? These are the stories I'll watch carefully. Right before the draft, we're going to do a draft episode every week leading up to the draft. Right before the draft, I hope we can do one on projected free agents, undrafted free agents, and who we think the Saints would sign, because they have really gone after that market. They have been doing that since 2006. It's just been a thing with this scouting department. They're not too good drafting the first or second round, but man, they can find some guys in the undrafted market, honestly. Bob, last thing of the night, what you got going on in the Bayou Blitz tomorrow?
We're moving to an earlier time slot because Brendan Boylan. I don't know if you folks know, Brendan Boylan is preparing to get married, and he and Katie are having a destination wedding in Florida, and they're flying down this week to look at the venue, prepare the venue, do the cake testing thing, everything like that. So we're going to have to move to an earlier slot tomorrow. Still to be determined. It's looking like it's going to be about 3:30, 4 o'clock, Central Time. But we'll announce it for sure in the morning. So stay tuned for that. Whatever time we go on, it's going to be more draft stuff. What kind of tackles might they be targeting? And I say that, and I've kind of touched on it with Jordy Hultberg earlier today too. If they have their pick of tackles, and we could talk more about this next week too. If they have their pick of tackles, do you focus on a left tackle or a right tackle, or a guy that played left tackle or right tackle in college? That's going to be a very telling strategy as well. What kind of defensive lineman might they go after? Alan and I did touch on that tonight. Will linebacker be in play? There's a few linebackers that that I really like in this draft. What about the safety class? Just stuff like that. Because I think it was a bullshit Bleacher Report report earlier today about this class looks extremely weak and that class looks extremely weak. The Bleacher Report that still has the Saints picking Bo Nix at 14 in the first round. That's how intelligent these guys are. So yeah, we'll. I'll go a little Bob Rose-ish on Bleacher Report too.
Oh, some of these guys, it's like I don't think they even watch the Saints when they start putting these reports together.
Nope.
They really don't. No, Anna, we're not really talking about moving up. We were just talking about who we, if we were to move up, what it would cost to move up, and who would you move up for? That was really what I was going for with that. Who do I think Atlanta is taking? Unfortunately, Atlanta's going to take a defensive end. They're going to take Versay. They're going to take Dallas from Alabama. God, it's like Forrest Gump. This is Tex. He's from Cleveland, and but yeah, I mean that's what I think. They've got to take a defensive player because their defense is garbage. Their team is garbage. Their facility is garbage. Their city's garbage. But enough of that. Yeah, that's all I care about. If we go 2-16 or 2-15, as long as those 2 wins are against the Atlanta Falcons, I'm fine. That's how I feel. But yeah, that's something we can talk about. Some of the positions of other positions needs. I feel that left tackle is a must. Right tackle is a quote unquote luxury, but left tackle is a must because that's the position that's the hardest to fill. Damn thing. You can get a right tackle, but the left tackle is what is key. To make this team go. All right, since this thing's really acting up on me now, it's giving me the signal to go. Bob, check out Bob Thursday. Oh, I'm sorry, Wednesday, an hour early. So 7:00 Central Time, 8:00 Eastern Time tomorrow.
It might be earlier. It might be earlier than that, but we'll post the exact time in the morning.
Okay. And poor Brendan, he's getting married. He thought he could make decisions before. He didn't have his little partner yet to show him how the best way to make decisions. I don't know how I survived the first 25 years of my life, but somehow I didn't know how to do. I didn't know how to drive. I didn't know how to buy things. I didn't know how to do anything until I got my little sidekick who showed me the much better way to make my decisions. And yeah, she's probably watching this. That's why I'm saying it's this way. But yeah, that's what you install. Yeah, I know. Careful, Alan. Oh, she knows. She knows. We send reels to each other all the time, and a lot of them about my little partner telling me what to do. So, and she laughs about it. She really does because she's like, "Yeah, it's true. You do need help." Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.